Good afternoon, everybody. I am Sudeshna from MARG Business Transformation. On behalf of our team, a big welcome to the ProSci webinar on the value of change management. ProSci is a global organization who are leaders in change management. ProSci helps organizations all over the world in their journey of change. The research-based methodology enables leaders, managers, and employees to engage with their change and deliver desired results. ProSci was launched in India mid 2017, and since then, we, MARG Business Transformation, the authorized partners for ProSci for India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, have had a great and rewarding journey. Today, we are indeed glad to bring to you the webinar Value of Change Management. Your webinar facilitator is Krish. Krish is a very familiar face to all of you who've attended our ProSci sessions before. For those who do not know him, he is the director of MARG and heads our consulting function. He is a ProSci certified advanced instructor and is in his path of becoming the ProSci advanced deployment leader as well. So over to you, Krish, for today's webinar.
Thank you, Suleshna. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping that by the end of this 58 minutes, you would have a wonderful idea of not just the value, how do you set up the value of change management, perhaps a little bit of change management too, depending upon where you come from. But before we get into the content itself, a couple of ground rules. We are separated by a screen. We are all in a digitalized world. What can you do to leverage the most out of this 58 minutes? Here are a few things that we have in mind. Number one is in your Zoom window, you should see a variety of buttons, one of which is chat. My request is use the chat window to post any technical questions you have. Connecting, not connecting, audio, not audio. We're going to be doing some interactive activity, so if you're stuck in any of them. Use another icon that says Q&A for all the topic-related comments or the questions that you have. This will help us, there's an entire MARG team supporting this webinar. It'll help them classify the questions and respond to them during the webinar. So that's my second request. The third is, even if it's 58 minutes, I'm going to make you do some work, right? And it'll be good for you to have a sheet of paper in front of you, because along the way, I'm going to ask you to capture notes, capture takeaways. My hope is by the end of this 58 minutes, you have something concrete to work upon. So keep something handy that you can capture your thoughts and actions on. The last part is it'll be good for you to have another device. Preferably, it can just be a mobile phone, right? Why? Because on the mobile phone, we're going to be sharing a link on the chat window for a website called polev.com/margtransform. And when you go to the website and enter information, it appears here on the screen. It allows interaction to occur easily. So sheet of paper, another device in which you can do that would be really, really useful. With that, let's get into the webinar itself. Why are we doing this webinar? Why is this important? As we all know, we are in an environment where you're dealing with bigger, faster, speedier, cross-functional, cross-cultural, cross anything you like, as well as the complexity of the change is increased. It stopped being me going to a project manager's office and finding out what is this change about. There are many layers to every change. It's become hugely stacked wedding ice cream, a wedding cake kind of changes where you have layers and layers and layers. Why is this relevant to us? This is the environment in which the cost of failing at change has increased dramatically. This is an environment where with so much happening, we can't afford to do things all over again. If you didn't have the time to do it, time to do change management the first time around, how will you find time to do the change again? If you don't have the money to do change management the first time around, how will you find money to do the change all over again? The cost of redoing stuff or doing things poorly has also increased in this environment. It is with that in mind that we have the agenda for this session. We're going to start off with a very, very quick 5-7 minute description of what is this animal called change management and why should we care. We're going to start there. I want to then take you through a little bit of what is the selling we're talking about. Why are we talking about selling? Where does selling come in? And I'm going to rely a little bit on Daniel Pink's definition to take us through most of the rest of the session so that we have an understanding of the fact that end of the day, the value proposition, the need to define the value of change management occurs because there are people who need to understand why change management. And we're going to discuss the selling part of it and then get down to 5 perspectives you can use in order to land the value of change management with different people that you encounter. That's the plan for the next now 56 minutes, I guess. Let's jump into the content immediately. Let's set some basic facts. What are we talking about when we say change management? We are fundamentally saying at any time when you're rolling out a change, there are two work streams, if you like, that are running. There are two trains that are running on parallel tracks. There's one side of the story, which is the technical side of the change. It is what is the platform upon which this change is landing. Maybe you're rolling out an ERP, in which case the ERP becomes the technical side of the change. You get trained on the ERP, you're investing into the ERP. You're doing all that stuff around the ERP. But there's another track that is required, which is bringing people along. The track which is focused on the technical side is primarily focused on designing and then developing and then delivering, making sure it lands, making sure it rolls out, making sure it's installed, making sure people are trained to log in and extract reports. But the other track is equally important. That's the track that is focused on how do people react to that change? What do they think about that change? Are they comfortable with the change? Can they use it? Can they use it continuously? Can they use it and become as good or better at it than they were before? That is the people side of change. And that is focusing on embracing the change, having them adopt it, having them use it sustainably, use it consistently. And when these two tracks work together, then we have the kind of results we want. Then we have the success we want. In ProSci, we often use a quote from Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi, coach of a very, very well-known American football team. But I love this quote because you can take it outside of the context of sports alone. Even in general, eventually the cumulative effect of the change comes only because individuals buy into the change. It's when every individual succeeds, the cumulative effect takes the organization upwards, elevates the whole conversation. That's what we're chasing. We've always known that, guess what? When change occurs, there is a current state. We need to bring the organization over to the transition state. We need to bring the organization over to the future state. And guess what? Whenever we hit the future state, it's success. It's party time. It's champagne popping. We have achieved the benefits we want. But we all know it's not as simple as that. Why is it not as simple as that? Because those boxes, when you describe the whole organization as a nice red colored, yellow colored, or green colored box, that's not true. A better metaphor for what an organization is that that red box consists of lots and lots of people. And those lots and lots of people need to move from their current state, what they are doing today, what they are successfully doing today, and they must be willing to take the risk and step forward and get into the transition state, learn how to do things without giving up on the expertise that brought them here, without losing out on the knowledge that brought them here. They need to learn new things, and then they need to step into the future state where now they're getting good at it. That journey needs to take place. I need to move an Anna from current state to transition state to future state. I need to move a Bala from current to transition to future. I need to move a Zia from current to transition to future. And it's when most of them have come across, all of them have come across that I succeed. I need to view this from the lens of an individual. At some level, it's not the organization that's changing, it's the individuals that are changing. And if you wear that lens, you realize that you have dropouts all along the way. Not everyone is coming along. Somewhere during transition state, people are saying, too difficult, not interested, doesn't make sense. Why should I even care? And then the future state gets even worse. Eventually, you reach a future state, you finish your project, you say we are done in some form or shape, and what you're left with is Swiss cheese. What you're left with is something full of holes. At the very minimum, it's not what you expected, it's not what you got. You would have liked something more, you would have liked something stickier, you would have liked something better, you would have liked people to be more successful in the whole game. And this is what we want. And given that this is what we want to have people realize the benefit and succeed altogether, we get this. And why do we get this? Because a normal strategy around managing change is very, very simple. I'm going to send out an email on Monday. I'm going to make sure they all get trained on Tuesday. And da Wednesday it's go live. Wednesday it's launch. Thursday is probably a postmortem. Friday, we're looking at other solutions. Monday, we're starting the whole trip all over again. Is that the world we want to live in? Is that what we need to do? Is that the way we want to treat our most precious resource? All those individuals who are making the organization successful. So, in this context, what is this animal called change management? It's fundamentally making sure people are successful through the change. We want to prepare them, we want to equip them, we want to support them in this journey of making this change successful, of making them successful, and together we win. And in this process, don't forget, we are in the business for a reason. Our organizations exist for a reason. We need to deliver business results. Hence, the ROI becomes an important factor. I need to make sure that this process of preparing them, equip them, and supporting them leads to business success too. And that is the story behind the change management. Why change management? Because if we didn't prepare and equip and support these people, then we are always going to be struggling on helping them land. All right. Once we understand why we need change management, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about where is the selling of change management coming from? You understand it, makes sense for you, but now how are you going to convince the next person? And whether you're an internal employee, colleague, or you're an external consultant, or you're someone coming from outside, either ways, you're always trying to pitch, you're trying to help leaders of change, people who are saying, I want this change, I want that change. You're trying to help them understand what is the value of change. And at the same time, you're also helping project teams, the people who are doing the work, also understand the value of change management. So leaders need to know why change management, project teams need to know why change management. They are both coming from different perspectives. Let me, I want to make this as interactive as possible. So let me get a sense of where you are, where your reality is. I'm going to be inviting you to pull up your poll EV. There is a link that's probably appeared in your screen, in your chat screen, I guess. And what I would like you to do is when you go to that link, you will see a picture like this. Drop a pin, tap on the screen or drop a pin on how often are you selling change management to different communities. So if you're always selling change management to executives and senior leaders, drop a pin here. If you're rarely selling change management to solution developers are the people who come to you and say, I'm going to do agile. Solution developers are the people who are coming to you and saying, I'm doing Six Sigma, I'm doing lean, I'm doing artificial intelligence. The solution developers are the people doing the work. The project managers and the leaders are the people who are guiding, navigating the work. My question to you is, are you in the position of selling change management to these groups? If so, how often? One of the things that's important to note is as, as you as you think to yourself, there are two lines of reasoning that you could adopt over here. One, answering this poll will help you understand, hey, it looks like I'm working mostly with this word. What about these two words? Is it likely that these two groups, these two communities also need to have, I need to have conversation with them? Because you're also getting to see what others are saying. You're seeing that there is a fair bit of conversation that's happening across the columns. So that's one line of reasoning. The other line of reasoning I would invite you to do is the fact that it looks like we are always talking about change management with this community. But look at this, we're not necessarily always talking to this community. Thank you. Some of the responses are coming up. This is good news, right? Because the solution developers, the people who are subject matter experts, if, instead of solution developers, I said the SMEs, they are in very important community who needs to understand why should I manage this change? Why should we work on adoption and usage? Isn't there easier ways to do it? So for that community, it's very, very important that this lands really, really well. I hope you all have access to polev.com. Just please remember that along the way of this next 50 minutes, it's 45 minutes, I'm going to be using Pole EV quite a lot to elicit information from you to help you engage with what you and all the other participants, there are quite a few participants in this workshop, in this webinar. So it's important that we get a sense of where we all stand. All right, now if you look at this picture, you look at it and you realize that most of the time often and sometimes we are working with others. We need to pitch change management. And that pitch of change management can happen as a 5-minute pitch, as a 5-second pitch. They're getting off the lift and you get on with them and they ask them, what is it? What are you working on? And you want to be able to give a crisp answer. What are you working on? What are you trying to deliver? What is it that you're responsible for? And those become very, very important questions for you to be able to swiftly answer, Hence, we're talking about selling. Hence, we're talking about five perspectives. That's one part of it. The second part of it is we need to have a clear understanding on what are we selling and what are we not. What we are definitely not selling is a communication plan, is a resistance planning document, it's an impact index, is here is a magic wand. You come to me and I'll fix your change management problems for you. That's not what we are doing. We are not doing those things. That's not what we are selling. That's not what we are pitching. What we are pitching is results. What we are pitching is benefits. What we are pitching is outcomes. What we are selling over here is a solution to the problem that each of those communities we saw just before already have. And what does that mean? We need to be able to go to a senior leader, engage them in conversation, and get their buy-in. When we get their buy-in, what happens next? We start having a mind share. They say, "Oh, you are the guy who's doing this for me. You are the gal who's doing this for me." We get that connection. From that connection, we have a commitment to an approach. So based on that connection, when you go back to them and say, "I need you to help me on this for the project," well, guess what? You have probably a ready yes. And finally, based on all of this, hopefully you get the resources you need. You need FTE, you need funding, you need time, you need energy from that leader. You get all of that. Cautionary note, when we say buy-in over here, we're not saying, that sounds interesting. Why don't you start doing it and tell me how you're doing? It's not buying. For me, buy-in is when the person says, that sounds good, I need it, tell me what you want from me. The second is active buying. The first is passive buying. We don't want passive buying. Again, on the spirit of selling, how do we get to that? How do we run that conversation? The old selling mantra used to be always be closing, always keep the conversation running towards, do you like change management? Do you like change management? Does it make sense? Do you like it? But Daniel Pink's new selling formula, which speaking again about A, B, and C, he said it's a different A and a different B and a different C. The first A is attunement. It's your ability to connect with the problems that particular leader, that particular role is facing. Your ability to connect with the reality of that role and say, they are struggling in delivering this result. What role, what part does change management play in fixing that? The second element, which is B, is buoyancy. Is your energy, is your belief, is your commitment to deliver that solution. And that can get outside your comfort zone. I'm not asking you, can you do a good communication plan? I'm not even asking you, can you deliver change management projects? I'm asking you, can you solve that business problem for that leader? And your ability to say that, articulate that, and come up with a solution is critical. The third part is clarity. Clarity is what we're talking about here. How clearly are you able to articulate, here is your problem, here's the solution, this is how much of your problem my solution takes care of. This is your value proposition. This is you being able to say, here is how I can help you. What's value proposition? Michael Cox's definition is beautiful. A positioning statement that describes for whom you do what uniquely well. Let's break that into pieces. The target buyer, whom you do. You need to understand who they are. You absolutely need to know not their names, not their history, not their designation, not that they are your best friend, but what challenges do their roles bring for you? Hence their problem and your solution. Your solution, how does your solution fit into that? And the last part is the uniquely well part, right? Why does your solution land better than anyone else's? Why is it going to help them? This is something I would like you to take away from this workshop. You need to keep this in mind. You need to do this on a sheet of paper every time you get a chance, which is think of people as people. Don't just, so when you go back to that slide the next time and it says leaders and executive sponsors, don't think of executive sponsors and leaders. Think of a sponsor named Aisha, who's actually sitting there and who's struggling with some issue or the other. A project manager, Mona, a solution Kabir, someone who's a Kabir who's actually sitting there trying to find a solution for a problem or is actually trying to create an agile plan or a Six Sigma plan or a new performance management plan. Whatever the changes, someone is sitting there doing that work, and you need to be able to answer those questions. What's keeping them up? What has been their older experience with change management? What are they most engaged with? What have they struggled with on this area? So your value proposition is not something sitting in the air. It's not sitting in a PowerPoint slide. It has to be something that makes meaning to a particular person. And the particular person in that particular role has a particular bunch of challenges. And we are still not done. You can't just take a solution to a person and say, I got a solution. Would you want to be interested? No. To help them get it, you need to put the solution in context. Priority is a function of context. The simplest example I can give you is I've probably learned more about geography and viruses than I ever did at school in these last few months. The context has made me go back to atlases much more than I ever did. Go back to looking at what's a bacteria, what's virus, what do each of them do, much more than ever before. What priority we place on things depends upon which context we are in. And that context is what helps us understand that people we are talking to are not trying to find a solution called change management. No, they are trying to find a solution to their business problem. Leo McGinna, in his quote, which was then quoted by Theodore Levitt, made this beautiful comment. People are not buying drills, they're trying to find and make holes. There's a data point that says in America, the drills in their lifetime are probably used for 13 minutes. That's the total usage of a drill. So it's not the drill that's being purchased; it's the holes at the right time, at the same place, at the time and space you want, of the size you want, of the depth you want. You're not selling change management; you're selling a solution to a problem. So keep in mind that we are in the business of selling, we are in the business of landing stuff, and to do this, we are going to be using five perspectives. In this context, to declare why should you use change management, how does this connect to your results, we're going to use five ways to get there. The five ways are going to be one, to do directly with when you do change management, do you realize this much of your projects, problems, or ROI are taken care of by change management? That's the first connection we make. The next approach is to say, if you do change management well, here's how your speed improves, here's how your speed of adoption improves, here's how your utilization improves, here's how people get to do things well. Notice both of them are about the results, directly about the results. We also then talk about another perspective, which is about reducing the costs and risks. So it's not just about the upside. Hey, you have ROI when you do it with me. Hey, you have these factors improving when you do it with me. It's more about the fact that I can give you less pain. I can help you have less pain in your project. Then comes also very, very important factor. How are we helping them understand it? How are we articulating it? What is a language in which we can make sense out of change management, help them make sense out of change management? And the last one is sheer probability. The fact that we are stating if you do change management properly, then you do get a brilliant result. And the brilliant result is around increasing the probability of your success. These are the stands we take. And again, I'm reminding you, please keep a sheet of paper with you because as we go through these five steps, I would like you to capture as many of them onto your sheets of paper. I'm not going to actually stop at each stage and ask you to capture it in sheets of paper, but I'm counseling you to gather as much of it as possible. Let's get on with the first one, change management ROI. The biggest myth I run into most of the time is change management has an ROI independent of the project. Why is this a myth? Because the project eventually is for benefit realization. Organizations start an ERP project not just because they want to install ERP everywhere. They start a culture project not because someone said, hey, I read a nice book, we should have this culture and start doing it. No. Organizations engage in change because they want the adoption. They want people to engage with that change, embrace the change, use the change. Management's ROI is that part of the ROI that depends upon people buying into the change. Change management's ROI is how much of the changes impact depends upon people changing the way they do their job. Some changes, whether people change their job or not, you're going to roll out a new operating system and all the comms, whether people change, whether it changes or not, changes, people change the way they do a particular expense statement or not, doesn't make a difference. The underlying operating system changed, but that's all there is to it. But then instead you do a change in rolling out Office 365. You're moving your services to the cloud. Different ballgame. Different changes have different levels of adoption dependency. So the first perspective, helping your organization understand how much does your change rely on people buying into your change. Again, I'm taking you back to Pole EV. Can can you go to Pole EV and type in the multiple of 5, 5, 10, 15, multiple of 5. Uh, to what percentage of your project, what percentage of your project's outcomes depends upon people changing their way they do the job? You're saying in general, a big chunk of your project's outcome is going to be around people adopting. All of us are saying, damn, I need people to adopt it. Now, here is a question that you need to take back to your leaders. And it's a vital question. Keep this in your mind and then ask yourself, if this is true, what does this mean in terms of the amount of time, energy, and investment that my leaders are putting into the change? On the one hand, we are saying that guess what? For my change to land, a good chunk of my results depend upon how people buy into it and change the way they do their jobs. Right? Big chunk of it depends upon that. In comparison, what percentage of my time, of the organization's time, of the leader's time is invested into focusing on that adoption and usage? How does that actually play out? And this comparison is usually the point where a leader says, wow, I didn't think about it that way. I didn't think about the fact that so much of my adoption relies on people changing the way they work, but I'm spending only so much time on it. Uh, so much of my work, of my project depends upon adoption, and what I have as a change management budget is probably uh, coffee cups with a name of a person and a change. I'm probably having one dinner for everyone, and that's pretty much it. I'm not thoughtful change management. This is an absolutely important question to be placed in front of your leaders. Um, you know what? By the end of today, I'd be grateful after this webinar if you guys go to your leaders, pick a project, pick a leader, and ask the same combination of questions. Ask the leader how much of your change relies on people changing the way they work, and tell me how much are you investing into that side of that project. And if you get an answer that you find interesting, please drop a mail to prosci@margonline.com. We'd be very curious on what was the answer. It is a critical question, and we have asked these questions in a variety of contexts, in a variety of forums. In every case, the answer is the same. A big chunk of my change relies completely upon how people change the way they do their jobs. And here's the beautiful part. We can step up the game. We can step up the game and say, hang on, what if we now look at everything that is changing in the organization? I asked you the same question. I asked you, tell me, in each of those cases, of the 5 projects you're doing, 10 projects you're doing, how much is it dependent on adoption and usage, and how much are you actually investing in that? So this is the first perspective. This is the first way in which you help people understand the value of change management by making a connection between, hey, this is the key project you're running. These are the results you're looking for. Your project is not going to succeed unless a good chunk of people buy into it. How are you thinking about it? I'm going to give you 30 seconds of silence and give you a chance to respond to this new sheet of paper. In your own sheet of paper, think of a project that you were thinking of. For that project, what is the overall results and outcome expected? How much is dependent on people? Right? That was your 30 seconds. Your next perspective, SUP. We call this SUP. SUP is an acronym that comes of these 3 ways, 3 factors that help you determine the financial return or ROI of a project. The first one is speed of adoption. The first in SUP, the S stands for speed of adoption, and that's how quickly are people up and running on their new systems, on your new process, showing the new behaviors you're looking for. How fast are they landing there? Is it a 18-month project and you're still not seeing light of day, or is it 3-month project and you're already seeing conversion? The second, SUP, so the second part, U, is ultimate utilization. It's how many are now bought into every aspect of the change and they're using it. They are now comfortably in the future state. They are now staying in the future state, hopefully. Ultimate utilization, right? They're there. They are where they needed to be. And then comes the third one. We know from experience that these alone are not enough. People can drop off. People need not be good at this. And when you're not good at something, you probably give up on the change. So the third element is proficiency. How good are they at it? We look at this as SUP because we're saying we need all these 3 elements for people to experience, for them to succeed. Remember, we said prepare, equip, and help people succeed. To make that happen, we look at SUP. And what does this mean from a cash flow perspective? Your speed of adoption is nothing more than the slope of that line, the shape of that line. How fast are people picking up the change? Ultimate utilization is where are you ending up? Eventually, how many people of your population or your intended target population have bought into it and are staying in it and they're successful at it? Proficiency is the height of every one of these bars, the short bars and the tall bars. It's the benefit that the organization receives from it. And perhaps the best way to look at SUNP is not just in terms of the expected cash flows out of this project, but compare it to what happens when you don't manage change well. When you don't manage change well, the shape of the bar is very, very different. The amount of ultimate utilization is lower. The proficiency, the benefit you got from it is much lower. In effect, you're saying that as a, if you go the route of saying, you know what, Monday morning email, Tuesday morning training, Wednesday morning I'm going to go live, and I don't do change management well, I'm going to have a lower adoption. People are not going to buy into the change because they're unable to prioritize on it. They're not going to be ultimately utilizing it because they never saw the value in it. They didn't make the journey. They're not going to be good at it because they didn't utilize it. As compared to change management, where you do it really, really, really well. So again, let me check whether this makes sense for you. What's your, again, there's a poll EV question. How often have you seen SUNP impact project outcomes? Do you see it all the time? Do you see some of the time? How has it worked for you? And that's the beautiful part of it, right? If we don't focus on adoption, utilization, and proficiency, then we're just rolling out the project and we're hoping people will catch up. And sometimes with mandated change, that's what happens. We say by this date, this must happen, and we run with it. But there are mandated changes and mandated changes. There are burning platforms and there are burning platforms. You have a code of conduct in your organization. You would like to mandate it. How are you going to measure adoption on it? How are you going to understand how people are connecting with it? How are you going to understand whether people live your values? And I'm picking something behavioral just to make the point. Think about non-behavioral things. Think of project-related things. How well do you engage with the organization, with the people, with the employees, with different functions to understand how you are using it, how you are using it? They're rolling out a new expense management system. The way a salesperson reacts to it, uses the old system, uses the new system, is different from the way the finance person uses it. They're both in different ends of that expense value stream, but their perspective on the change is very, very different. And look at what you're saying. 96% of the time we have run into it. 96% of the time we run into SUNP. Uh, it's 98% effectively, right? These numbers tell us a story that these are very, very important and they affect ROI. And because they affect ROI, I'm sure all of you know time value of money, all of you know NPV, you have run into those terms before, you know discounted cash flows. You know that the quicker people buy in, speed of adoption improves. The quicker people are good at something, the better the benefit you get out of the project. And hence, this perspective is a beautiful perspective with which you can help your organization, your leadership, your teams, your peers understand the value of change management. Again, I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds in which to consider what this means for the project you are on. All right, you're coming to the end of this 30 seconds. From next time on, the 30 seconds, I'll not keep it as dead air. I'll probably have a couple of conversations, couple of questions. But for the moment, we now have two perspectives in our thought process. I want to complete our five perspectives. The next one is focusing on costs and risks. Why are we focusing on costs and risks? Sometimes it's difficult for leaders to relate to the upside. Sometimes everyone is doing XYZ ERP, everyone is doing AI, everyone is doing chatbots, everyone is doing digitalization. Why do we need to do something special? Sometimes the question is, I get this, but we have done so many other changes before. Why do we need to do this differently? Why are we beginning to measure the value of change? We don't need to do all that. And sometimes to that persona, to that quantity, we may probably need to help them understand what are the costs of failing to manage the change well. And the answer is two letters, R and E. It's rework. It's redoing it. It's redesigning the stuff. It's rescoping it. It's retreating from the change you had. It's reorganizing a new phase. It's reconsidering why the hell did we do this change in the first place. It's reassigning resources. We get hit by a lot of REs when we don't manage change well. And we've all been in this situation where we underestimated the people side of change. We said, of course, people will get it. Of course, we should have a gym in our premises. Everyone will love it. It was there in the engagement survey, employee engagement survey. And you have a gym, and not very many are using it. Of course, we should distribute Fitbits and make people fit. Doesn't happen. Of course, we should have New Year's resolutions. They work really well. And we redo them every year. Both personally and professionally, the cost of not doing change management invariably comes down to not having done a good enough job and living with an under suboptimal job or redoing the whole thing again. This is an important slide. What we have come up with is a bunch of typical issues that turn up, costs and risks that turn up. And it's going to be there in the slide deck, and you might want to remember slide number 35. So it's got a bunch of this stuff already. Change saturation is an issue. Loss of work by the project team, those are costs and those are risks. And we also added this part because we know most often the project doesn't quite fail, it doesn't succeed. And there's a whole world between that didn't fail and didn't succeed. So we have that last element too. But again, since all of you are in the call, I would like to open up Polly and ask you, what have been some identifiable costs and mitigable risks your projects have incurred due to pure adoption and usage? Sorry, due to poor adoption and usage. What are some of the things you have run into? And it's the worst part, right? You realize that it's something supposed to happen by a particular time. It doesn't happen. It's like chewing gum. It extends. And as it extends, you start having a cost attached to that extension. People who are supposed to be released from that are not released in that. My favorite question to any group of senior leaders is, how long do you want to have this topic in your agenda? Because it never goes away. Customer defection happens. We have defection in terms of people saying, well, it's not going to ever land, is it? And the defection need not be away from you. It can just be away from the project. Other things come on plate. Other things take priority. Priority is a function of context. My earlier context was everyone loves this project, it's going to happen quickly. My current context is this project is never going to take off. Let me find other projects to work on. External flexibility. You start losing your ability to be responsive to the things that are happening around you. Each thing you do takes a lot of time. Each thing you do to the utmost level of perfection, and it keeps going on and on and on. Priorities change. The organization starts looking at what else can we be doing? Where else can we be going? Now, this is beautiful, right? As this comes up, you're starting to realize that going to someone and saying, you should have change management because we do good communication plan and training plan is the wrong way to do it. These are the problems those leaders, those organizations, those project teams, and you and I as employees are having. We need to be talking about this as what we are focusing on. We need to be saying that, hey, guess what? When we do change management well, we are minimizing these. We are minimizing frustration. We are minimizing confusion. We are probably minimizing resistance. An organization where employees come in and they're told, we do change really well. We are good at this. We're good at this not because we roll it out really fast. We're good at this because we do it together. It's a great place to be in. So again, I'm going to pull up another ask to you. I want you to consider in your project, in your document, create 2 bullets, specific bullets on things that will not happen in that project because you're doing change management. Focus on cost, focus on risk. And while you're writing that down, Sudesh, are there any questions I can take?
This time while registration only, we had a few questions. So I'm taking one of them because it goes with whatever you are saying. This is like change is a gradual process. Some change take multiple years to happen maybe. So we all expect the benefit to come in a single financial year, but that doesn't happen. So how do you quantify results when adoption is not uniform across departments?
Great question. 2 parts. One is there's actually we work on something called an advanced immersion session that's coming up mid-October, where we deep dive into this, where we say that, hey, guess what? We need to take your organization and break it up into functions. And we do something, we industrialize something called a change impact index for each group. For each group, we ask what is changing, what is changing, what is changing, what is changing. And essentially the SUP that we just discussed, gets formed for each of those groups. I need to understand what's going to be the speed of adoption for this group, speed of adoption for this group, speed of adoption for this group. So if you we can measure it, we can track it, and by measuring and tracking it, we can land it at the optimal time for each of those groups. That's one part of it, and that's part of what we do. It's one of the things that we need to deliver because the organization pain point is, oh, that function they never want to change. We need to change that stereotype. That's one part of the game. The other part of the game is a comment from my side. Because change is a gradual process, and it is, it doesn't mean that it's a slow process. The concepts of tipping points still exist. The concepts of bringing change agent networks and accelerating it still exist. The concept of making sure we are all doing it together in a structured form to bring everyone in still exists. What we're going through right now is a process where we are accepting a lot of change very quickly, doing it at different levels of quality, but we are all doing something differently now as compared to before. So I would caution against assuming gradual change equals slow change. We have I've personally worked on projects, culture change projects, which have landed in 9 months. And that it landed in 9 months and 7 months because the organization says, yes, I want to do this. Yes, we want to do this. Situation, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So, as you were saying, by group wise, we have to understand that where is each group
Yes.
is, and the intent comes in, like where the speed also comes in,
Yes.
and then the intent, and hence, how we can like easily quantify those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we need specialized tools and specialized process. But absolutely, we can do it and we should do it. Right. I want to move on to our fourth perspective. This is a good one. I love Nelson Mandela's quote over here. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes here. It's a rational cerebral understanding. If you talk to him in his language, they get it here. They connect with it. It makes sense. It's that point where someone said something and you got an insight and it's like a lock opened, right? For those moments, we need to make sure the language we use is relevant. What we normally end up using is these words. Why do we end up using these words? Most of us, typically, when we talk about change management, we talk about either working against resistance or building resilience. These are the words that we find so easy to communicate as a short form. But the problem is that comes from your perspective. It's talking about what you do. What we want to focus on is what is going to be different for them because you were in the game. The language we use is critical. So I'm now taking a few moments to make sure you understand what we said earlier about selling, right? About making sure that the language you use helps them understand how this is going to work. For example, our forward description of landing change, mobilizing people to deliver results. That's your forward description. And think about how much more powerful this is than your two words change management. Change management is probably what we do. Mobilizing people to deliver results is what we deliver. Which do you think resonates more with the listener? Guiding people through personal change impacts, helping people maximally adopt and use, success to people, helping organizations get to the desired state. If you think about the number of ways in which we can say this, the number of ways in which we can help people understand what we deliver, how we help them, it makes a huge difference to how they react to us when we turn up in front of them. Mobilizing our energies in order to make a change land is an absolutely critical part of how we want to make change make sense to our listeners. I've I've made a zillion presentations. I've been in a zillion presentations and conversations where the first topic is around how do it's around how we end up doing it. And sometimes our listeners make us fall into the trap by saying, okay, I hear you. So tell me, how will you approach this? And at that point, it's very tempting to get into, I will do this and this, I will get this person to do it, I'll do this, I'll do that. But that's also a great way to open up to say, my approach is going to start with where are we suffering pain the most? Which results does our organization usually struggle with most? What has been our history with change? How have you dealt with change? How does the organization react to change? Those are all great places to invite the listener to start talking about where they hurt. And eventually, that's what we want to help them with. We want to help them understand the value of change management by talking their language. Now, in this context, if they have just started off with change management and you say, I have SUNP, here is the formula, here are the numbers, that may not be what they wanted. Okay, sounds good. It sounds like you have got a good system. Great. But that's not what they needed. they wanted the answer to that earlier question, right? I have a particular group and I struggle with them. What do I do with them? We'll work on that group. We'll help that group succeed. Is where we want to take them. So this is yet another way in which we make sure that we are on the same page as the people we work with. Um, Paul Levy, why don't you guys give me some ideas on what words you're going to start using when describing the value of change management? What are you going to be doing different? I'm going to keep this poll on for about 30 seconds. How will you talk about change management differently? That's great. That's brilliant, right? When you connect it back to what the org is traveling towards and say, I can help us get there better. Um, Changing myself first is a brilliant self-reflective comment again. We have to rewire our minds. And to be honest, in this 1 hour, we are trying to do that. We're trying to make you think different about change management. We want you to be more successful in change management. Continual improvement, transformation, betterment, goal of the organization. Look, now we're not even using the word change anymore. Look at the answers that are coming. The answers that are coming are more about how do we land it? What benefits are you're going to derive by running it? And why was this important? Why is this important for us to start using this language? It's important for us to start using this language because our listeners are human and priority is a function of context. If their context was, okay, you are yet another function person telling me function thing, sounds good to me, versus you are talking about things that I would want to do different, and how would I do that different? So thank you for that. Again, a quick 30 seconds for you to capture in your project. Now, that was generic. Now, specifically in the change you were discussing, I want you to try and think of one phrase, like we said, mobilizing people to achieve results, right? Think of one phrase for your project which will be relevant to a particular listener. Think of one person you're going to be talking to tomorrow or today, and think of one way in which you'll describe change management. I'll give you 30 seconds on this. In the meanwhile, Sudeshna, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. It's about resistance. So it's saying change is painful and often met with resistance. So what and what steps do we take to make all stakeholders more receptive to change?
Great question. I want us to be a little cautious over here. Resisting is very natural to humans. It's very natural. It's a very natural reaction to change. Our objective over here is not only around resistance. Given that resistance is a natural part of change, we also look at what else stops them to from buying into change. Some things that stops them to buying into the change is sometimes change is complex. Sometimes they want the change, but not now. Sometimes they want the change, but not with this particular solution. I want to do a different solution. I don't want this ERP, I want to use that ERP. So your fundamental start point is, why are they resisting? Where is this coming from? In our 3-day session, when we deep dive into how a change lands, we spend a lot of time in what we call phase one, preparing for change, where we try and understand what has been their history with the change, what has been their experience with the change, what are their thoughts about this change. We also work with finding out who would they like to hear that message that this change makes sense from. You're going to find out that there's something called a preferred sender. Right person to help them understand the value of the change may not be you. It might be someone else. It might be their boss. It might be their chain of command. It might be a peer or someone they respect, a mentor they might respect. So what is your message is important, and that's a function of why they're struggling with the change. Who sends it is extremely important. And identifying this what and who send this message comes only after you understand them really, really well. So that's my thought. If you want to land the change well, and if you're certain that it's a particular body that's struggling with the change, you need to go to where they are. You need to go to what the experiences have been. For the rest of it, many things that we have said over here would give you a lot of context. You remember we talked about Aisha, we talked about Kabir, we talked about Mona, we talked about different people in different roles and asked you, what are they struggling with? A good analysis of, well, my CFO is struggling with this change because they have been working under a budget which is really, really tight, and they don't know where to squeeze the money, is a fair way to think about it. So think about the person, think about the role, and then you can take it from there. Krishna, did that make sense?
It did. So guys, we will continue with the webinar. If you can keep the questions, if any, coming in the Q&A so that we can at least capture it during the time of the webinar. In the Q&A window, if you can post your questions. In case we are not able to answer it within the designated time, we shall get back to you personally answering those questions. So keep the questions coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudeshna. And we started 2 minutes after the hour, right? I should get time till 1:02. Okay. The first perspective, uh, and the last perspective that I wanted to share with you is the sheer probability of success increasing when you land change well. The probability of success increasing and the change management correlation is something we have been chasing through our studies over the last 2.5 decades. And the studies tell us that when we do change management really, really well, as compared to doing it poorly, there's a 6x benefit, 15 times 690. We are saying that when you have poor change management, about 15% of projects succeeds. When you have excellent change management, 94% of projects succeeds. But here's the cool thing. When you move from poor to fair, you have almost a 3x jump. 15% of projects succeeding when you're doing a poor job, and you do a fair job just a little bit better, and guess what happens? You have a 3x benefit. And that's just not on the subject of meeting and exceeding objectives. It's true even when you're thinking about schedule. Again, look at the upward curve here. Poor to excellent change management, I get better benefits, more projects end up on schedule. What about budget? More projects end up on budget. In every one of these cases, having change management in the game means that we do better on the typical measures of most projects. More important, we're basically saying that a competence in change management, getting to do it better and better each time, means that more and more of my projects as an organization do better. And now we are getting into the business result territory of being resilient, of being responsive, of being proactive. All those words that we would like to use of our organization start coming true if we do change management better. And that's not just us saying it. This is from a McKinsey study that talks about a positive correlation between the level of change management effectiveness and the value, percentage of value that they were actually able to capture and benefit from. Look at the gap. The group that is over here in this end has a 143% performance versus 35% in the bottom end of this curve. This method is the simplest method, and I love to use it when I know that there are some projects in the org that have a very tight budget, have a very tight schedule, are critical to achieve objectives. The probability of success is a very, very powerful commitment to make to leadership. Leadership loves people who take responsibility. And as change managers, as change management, we say, this project is absolutely critical for you. And by coming in, we are going to give you a higher probability of success is a very, very powerful statement to make. Again, I'm just going to give you 30 minutes, 30 seconds on this. Can you capture two projects? Till now, you've been working on the same project. I wanted to capture in your sheets two projects that have a severe limitation on project objectives, on budget, or on schedule. Because then they have a clue that those stakeholders will understand this point very, very well. 30 seconds, please. Actually, we'll make it 20 seconds before Sudeshna throws me out of the session.
Can we take a question, Krish, or we leave it to the end?
I just want to put up something on Paul Levy and then we can take a question, please. Okay. What we've been doing till now is going through 5 ways in which you can get to people who you understand well. These are not 5 ways you want to go and start practicing. You need to start with the people. You need to start thinking about which leader in which role is struggling with which business issue for which this method of describing change management's value will work best. That's what we've been doing. My last request of you is, can you tell me which, I mean, I'm going to have this up on screen, but I'd be grateful if you can rank which of these methods you are likely to use the most, or which of these resonate the most with you. As a quick recap, CMROI is all about making sure that they understand the value that people bring to the game, people's adoption brings to the game. Language is Nelson Mandela's quote, right? We need to talk to them in the language that resonates the most. Cost and risks, the repart, redoing, reworking, and so on and so forth. Probability is helping them understand the connection between change management and achieving success. SUNP is giving absolutely quantitative numbers to how fast people will get on board, how much they will use it, and finally, how well they will be at the new change that's coming through. With that, Sulishna, I'm handing it over to you for Q&A. That's the last point I wanted to make. I hope that as you guys practice this out in the field, you're able to get more and more comfortable with these methods. To start with, it's going to be tough, it's going to be difficult, but reach back to us if you need help. Reach back to us to connect. We can help you make this successful for yourself. I hope that what we covered during the day was useful for you. And with that, sorry, Sulishna, finally, I'm open for questions if you have any. Sorry for that.
Thank you for being patient and going through our webinar. I know the time is almost towards the end, but we would be staying on to take questions from you. So if you all have any questions, please keep them coming. So we have here one question specifically saying, how to find where the change is needed?
Great question. This is in the area of solution design. I tend, coming to change management from being a business leader, I tend to look at where is the biggest gap between an expected result and a current result. And this can be both behavioral and can be technical. It doesn't make a difference which world you're in. But wherever the gap is the highest is probably where you want to start your five eyes discussion, right? Why is this gap existing? Is this gap supposed to be there? Who has seen a gradual trend of this gap increasing or decreasing? Is someone working on this gap? That's one approach, comparison. The second approach is find out who is struggling the most with a particular issue. The items that come up most frequently in conversations as this is an issue, we are struggling with this, we are struggling with this. The frequency with which an area pops up means there is an area where there's an opportunity for a change. The third part, both of these were where the change need is already apparent. The third part is ask yourself, where is an organization's aspiration or a business's aspiration? And how ready are you to meet that aspiration? The third one requires you to get outside the comfort zone of your organization and ask, well, others are doing it. Do I need to do it? Is doing it a part of my organization's aspirations? I would look at those three places to find out where a change fundamentally is required. Forget change management, just a change itself. That makes sense, Solution?
Fair enough. Uh, the another question is definitely on the more pain point we all mostly have is senior leaders and sponsors. Many senior leaders think change is a mandate. They don't value the softer aspect of change as necessary. How much can we influence senior leaders who have fixed mindsets and very little attention?
Great point on the fixed mindset too, right? Fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Great point. We are all human, and as a leader, I also remember my time as a manager, and I was not very different. Even as a manager, my thought process was don't bring change or change management towards me, stay away from me. I want to do it the way I was doing it yesterday. Which means when I became a leader, I would tend to do things the way I did them yesterday. As a manager, I was a supervisor and I told people and I directed them. Now I'm a leader, I tell people and I direct them. As a manager, I was told to do things, and if I didn't do them, I'll get a rap on the knuckles. As a leader, I don't know if I can go to anyone for help. As a leader, I don't know whether I can say I don't know something. As a manager, not knowing something was a bad thing. As a leader, perhaps it's still a bad thing. So my suggestion is probably have some empathy for the fact that the leader got to where they are through a journey. That's one part of it. Now, how do we get them to flip? There must be a good reason for them to flip. The game starts with a why. Why should they change? What are they trying to do that they're not successful in? What are they struggling with? Where are they getting stuck? What is the result that they would like to develop? Of all the 100 things they're doing, is there one thing they would like to experiment on? Is there one leader that they're very invested in? A subordinate, a direct report they're invested in who's handling a project, who's struggling? And do they need help with that? You need to start with where they are and not where we are. We have heard this, we know change management sounds good, but that might not be their reality. So I would say start with the why. The easiest way probably to get there is also look for a peer, look for someone else that they work with who relates to much of what we are saying and says, I like it, and use them as a voice. Preferred senders is always an important thing. So understand where they come from, establish a good why they need to buy into change management because that is important. And three, see if you can get that said by someone that they relate to already. That makes sense, Sudeshna?
Yes, it does. Uh, a few more. Um, how to bring down the communication gap to ensure change? So I would say, like, the intent and how it lands as to what you want. We are parsing the question that way, right, Chris?
Yes, yes. Uh, there are two, three parts. Again, my earlier question and this question, I'm relying on something called ADKAR. ADKAR is precise change model of individual change, how people relate to change individually. Uh, the first stage in helping people understand what the change is about is awareness and desire. And research tells us that people struggle and filter out messages as it reaches them. I might walk into this webinar saying, I got 1.5 hours of content for you. And you are going to be thinking, but I committed only 90 minutes or 60 minutes. I don't have time for this. Receivers receive messages with a clear what's in it for me, especially during times of change, which means the only way for us to verify it is to one is verify interpretation, have a feedback loop, tell them something and then ask, what did you understand? Tell them something and what did you hear? Engage with them and find out how's it going. So the feedback loop is absolutely crucial. That's one part. The second part is what Srishna was talking about, intention and impact. We want to do something, we do it, but what lands is different. And what's between the intention and the impact is it's your actions. So instead of thinking of communication as saying something, think of communication as doing something, which means that's why that's why having someone role play what is required lands a little better than just describing it on a PowerPoint. That's why showing someone this is what happens uh, when you drive with two hands versus when you drive with one hand. Showing and not telling makes a huge difference, which means also going back to the earlier comment on leadership, if you can get a few leaders to role model it, you don't need to spend separate time communication because they're seeing it done right. Again, without knowing the context, I don't want to sound like an over the counter, here's the solution, here's the solution. But those are some immediate thoughts that pop into my head. Um, did that make sense, Vishnu?
Yes, absolutely. Uh, Everybody, have reached the end of time, but we would like to take the questions we have received so far. So we shall continue. In case you would like to give any feedback, please feel free to write at prosci at margonline.com, or you can follow us in the links which are kind of posted on the chat window. Thank you once again, because this has been a kind of a great batch for us who stayed on right till the end. A few more questions, Krish. How do you handle conflicting expectations that impact change?
Again, we have a three-phase process through which we manage the change. The first phase is preparing for change. And that's the phase in which we try and figure out what are the different communities and what are they likely to struggle with? What are they thinking when this change was stated to them? Again, when I talked about ACCR and I said it's a change model, the first stage of that change model is awareness of the need of the change. We make sure that we're spending a lot of time having the leaders describe why are we doing this change. And like I said, we're going to keep checking interpretation to make sure that what I said and what you heard are the same. So the easiest way to avoid that expectation gap is to establish the expectations in a way that you understand. Uh, Again, going back to different functions, if you're in charge of the IT function, the expectations for me is around the kind of technology you're going to use, the kind of stacks you're going to use, the kind of coding you would let me use, and so on and so forth. But if I belong to the HR function, I'm expecting to hear expectations of the change based on what do you expect leaders to be doing, managers to be doing, how will they work with each other. It's more focused on the relationships. If I'm a sales guy, I'm going to be interpreting your change, the big change you bring in terms of how much more are you going to want me to sell, how much will you reward me for the selling. So different functions, I'm not even talking about human beings, I'm saying functionally, we might have a different perspective and different expectations. We lay them out on the table and help them understand it. The individual change expectations being a challenge, we should try and leverage the organizational hierarchy as much as possible. No matter who you are, it's very likely that your manager, is close to you and understands your aspirations, understands the language in which you can be connected with. It's probably a safe zone for you to call out the fact that this change is not working for me. So we also leverage organizational hierarchy in this game. So these are all the things that you could do to make sure that the mismatch is as little as possible. Be relevant in the communication, make it meaningful. The part we described in this webinar about selling change is very important. You have to think about who is a person listening to your communication and work backwards. I'm sorry, the way I'm saying it, it sounds all declarative. I don't mean to sound that declarative, but Since I don't know the context of the question, I'm making it statements. I hope that's okay. Sudeshna, back to you.
Yeah. Next one, to continue with the, like, the leader manager part. Top management has the intention to do the change, but not empowering subordinates to how to convince the top management to make them understand. Meaning, it's like, I think, between it's falling in between the managers and the leaders. I think there is a mismatch of how much you're empowering the rest of the organization to carry it through.
True. Go back to that initial slide where we said everything is happening faster and the stakes have gone higher for everything, right? I do, I can understand why leaders might feel a little more impatient about results, might struggle, might have a little less attention for hearing different ways to get something done. That's one issue that we must empathize with leaders on, one part of it. The other part of it is good is the enemy of great. Very often, leaders have already done something before, and in these troubling times, it's probably easier for them to go to the older method. With this preface, I'd probably say that if they're not empowering, you want to step back and ask yourself, what is the one thing you need? Forget getting empowered. What is the one thing you need from them? Specific thing, and then loop back to what we just discussed today. I want something from you. What is the language in which I'm setting it up for you? How am I setting up the context for it? Am I setting it up from you need this, or am I setting up as we need this? Are we picking on issues that is a pain point for them or not? Invariably, if I'm asking for empowerment from my manager and empowerment in the area of setting up meetings, and my manager is saying, I don't mind giving it to you, but that's not important. That's not what I'm struggling with. I'm struggling with delivering results. That's my problem. And if you don't have a solution to that, don't talk to me. So keep in mind that if you want to get to those leaders and gain more empowerment, the question becomes, where are you stuck? Where are they stuck? Last part, if as per Sudeshna, it is about a leadership manager challenge, we are now getting into the territory of culture change. It's worth it to ask ourselves, why are those leaders where they are? And then go back to an ADKAR model and start with, why do they need to change? So there are many aspects to it. Much of my solution revolves around where are they already struggling and whether you can connect with them on that rather than the principle of empowerment. Don't try to change the person, try to change the result of a particular conversation. And you can eventually get to the person. I, I hope that makes sense.
Yes. So, very related question. I'm just taking that one first. Is how do you assess the success of culture change?
Fair point. Since the broader question, I'm going to bring in something else that we do. We work with an organization called Human Synergistics to evaluate culture. So, my answer to how do you successfully deliver culture change, you got to measure it. You got to understand it. You got to define our culture in words that every one of us can understand. Because for too long, culture has been marked as something fuzzy, something that can't be understood. It's what everyone expects, everyone does, etc., etc. And if we leave it at that level, it's going to be a struggle to nail it and change it. We have to name it to tame it. We have to give it a name and say, this is the problem, that is the problem. So we use human synergistics to do that assessment to make it happen. The simplest answer I can give is take your desired culture and break it into behaviors. Your desired culture is you want, going back to the empowerment conversation, you want more empowerment, right? So let's break it up into pieces. One part is leaders get more comfortable with delegating risk. Another part is employees and managers get more comfortable with discharging risk in a transparent way, not taking surprises upwards, but actually being very transparent about I need help and I don't need help. Third part is the kind of projects that we can do is transparent. Everyone can view them. So we've taken empowerment, broken it up into three pieces, and then we start working on each of these behaviors. So that's, if you have a particular element of your culture in mind, that's the best place to start. One last request, do not start with culture change unless you have a specific business problem that is getting affected by your culture. Just because everyone is doing it, you don't need a culture change. Whatever you're doing is a mixture of many things. So you don't start unweaving it to solve just one problem. Ask yourself, what business problem am I stopped from achieving because my culture gets in the way? Break that into behaviors, and then you have change management coming up. Absolutely. Sudesh, back to you.
In continuation of that, the question has come in is, do we notice in our experience that behavioral changes, like culture change, is tougher than a system adoption in terms of adoption?
Uh, that's a yes and a no. It's a yes because I find culture changes being handled less effectively than they could, not because culture changes inherently are difficult. If I take system changes that I've been a part of, and those are system changes with a group, with a demographic that's worked with the system for a long, long time, it becomes just as difficult to pull them over. It becomes very difficult to pull them over and say, here's a new system which is going to work, where we're asking people to let go of the skills that made them successful and pick up new skills. The third part is, guess what? Systems and culture changes often come together. When I'm changing a system, I'm probably bringing in a lot of transparency to the organization. I'm bringing a lot of consistency to the organization. I'm bringing a lot of predictability to the organization. And at some level, you're touching culture when you do all of that. So that's where the yes and no. Um, that makes sense.
It does. Uh, this is a question I kept to the end because it's asking a lot about our methodology. So, what are the techniques for identifying and implementing change management?
Um, we are in a ProSci webinar, so I'm going to talk ProSci language. It's the methodology that we are using is MARG for very large changes and very small changes. It doesn't make a difference. In general, we have seen there are 7 contributors to success, the 7 things that we need to do in order to make a change successful. Make sure you have engaged leaders, make sure you have engaged managers, make sure you are engaging with employees, and you have a very strong communication plans to manage all of this. And to make a good chunk of this land really well, you need to make sure that you have enough resources being applied for change management. You need to have an approach, a consistent approach to change management. And now that approach question that you have, our approach at least is 3 stages. We first start by asking who all are involved, to what extent are they changing, how is this change going to impact them, what are they going to struggle with, and are leaders uniformly supportive of the change? Because the CTO is driving digitalization, the rest of the CXOs should not say, yeah, that's the CTO's change. No, because the digitalization is going to be practiced by every one of those functions. So we make sure leadership is aligned. Those are among the first things that we do. Then we take it to the next level and ask ourselves, are our managers prepared to take this forward? We need to empower our managers, enable our managers, and make sure that they are able to take this to their employees. So get the sponsors aligned, understand the change ourselves, try and be proactive about where the anxiety could come from. And based on that, work with the managers, create a few more plans with which you can handle those plan Bs and plan Cs and so on and so forth, and roll out the change. Very simplistically, that's our story. Formally, we call it preparing for change, executing the change, and making sure it sticks. Reinforcing change is absolutely critical. You're not done till people are effortlessly practicing it. I remember a change that we were rolling out, and for me, we were rolling out the change to a group of demographic who have been in the system for a long time, and I knew the change had landed when subsequently they were inducting a new bunch of employees, and they spoke about the change that they were doing as though that's how we do it. They didn't speak of it as a new way we have started practicing 2 months back. Is this? They instead said, "This is how we do it in this organization." That's when I knew the change had landed. Sushma, would you like to add to that? Did that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense, Krish. I think that's quite a comprehensive way to address that question. Moving on, I'm having a few questions come, so we will be taking the questions. Um, Training with a new set of technology changes will take a lot of time. How do we speed up the process?
Today's world has moved to a point where it's just-in-time training. When I say just-in-time training, I'm not talking about training alone being just in time. It's the training analysis, training need being done just in time, the training event being done just in time, the training evaluation being done just in time, the application of the training being just in time. So the whole damn thing, sorry, the whole thing has to be done just in time in packetized form. The best way to do it that we have experienced, MARG is also a training organization, is a absolute unwavering commitment from the managers of the employees who need to be trained on the subject that they need to be trained. Training fails, especially when done quickly, when it's a spray and pray method. Let everyone get into a time management class and eventually we'll be better in time management. Doesn't work. I need managers of employees to say, no, my employee needs change management, needs time management, and I need the manager to have talked to the employee before and saying, this is why I need time management, and getting the employee's acceptance that, yes, I do think I need time management. Then that person is ready and willing to go through the change process. We call this ADKAR again. We need to build awareness and desire in that person about learning that before we give them the knowledge. Otherwise, they're in the room and marking time, and we're touching just too many souls. So, first part, do it quickly, engage the organization, make sure the employee is interested in picking it up. Second part, of course, is try and be as modular as possible. Be specific. In this method, when you have focused that this person has a time management problem with large projects, this person has a time management problem with estimating time. They always give a shorter time than it's actually required. This person has a time management problem because they never get anything done. This person has a time management problem because they have perfection issues. They should not be all going to the same time management class, right? Or at least their responses should be different. Back to my training need analysis comment, you need to understand from the managers what is the problem you're trying to solve. Besides that, e-learning is a great way to run it. We have an e-learning solution for all managers and employees on change management. Why? It paints with a broad stroke, which means subsequently when you talk to them about the subject, they understand it much better. Besides that, technology now is moved, and you can rely on a lot of ways to deliver the training, but you want to make it stick. You need to start with the employee feeling the need for that learning. It's not going to work otherwise.
Yeah. The next question, the last question, perhaps we are taking today. What are the factors which we should take into consideration to influence change and to make change happen? Which are the factors which should be kept in mind? Maybe a little rehash of your earlier answers, but maybe prioritize it.
If we want to land the change well, if we want to make sure the change stays and sticks, we must start with the intention of wanting to make it change and stick. So the whole game starts with having a leader who explicitly says, I want adoption, I want usage, I want this change to land. The game starts there. If you don't have a seat at the table, if that thought process is not there, we can do a lot of doings, but it's not going to achieve the result we want. So number one, you must have a sponsor who's active and visible and wants this change to land. Once you get that, you must have a formal approach. Why am I saying you must have a formal approach? You must know what we're doing. Otherwise, it's going to feel to the sponsor that, okay, apparently I asked that day and suddenly one kiosk turned up. I asked that day and suddenly pamphlets turned up. What is happening here? The approach makes sure that different people in different roles know what they need to do at what points in time. Why is that important? We need to engage the organization. We don't do this by saying, I'm going to sit in the project war room for 10 hours and then come up with a plan. No, you have to engage with the sponsors to take the message to their leaders, to take the message to the employees, to be the face of the change. We need to have those leaders, those managers, the subject matter experts, then cascade the information next level and bring people along. We need to have our organization be leaders of change. And that's one part of the journey on what they do. And this helps us communicate really, really well with employees. We engage very, very well with employees. This requires our resourcing. This requires our thought process. We absolutely work on what needs to be done. But you need to have a sponsor who's supportive. You need to have a strong and clear approach. You need to have structure and intent on what you're trying to get done. Leverage the organization and you're good to go.
Yeah, I feel like, in implementing ProSci, we say that it's the world-class structured methodology. But again, it takes into account the intent of the organization to do the change. So yeah, it starts definitely from that intent.
I'm just sorry, I'm going to make that last comment. For those of you who are saying, hey, I want to do this change management well, sometimes I often say, instead of choosing a project in which you can do change management, try and pick a sponsor who wants to do change management. That's probably going to help you a lot. Sorry, Sudeshna, back to you.
Yeah, so we have come to the end of it. We have possibly, we ran over time by 20, 25 minutes and we answered the questions which were there on the window. If anything else you guys have, just kind of, just reach us out at prosci@morgonline.com or any of the other LinkedIn, or follow us or post us at LinkedIn, Facebook, anywhere, and we shall get back to you. Thank you, and thank you very much. And it is great to see, like in the chat windows, people are like saying that they enjoyed the session, both from practitioner groups who have been in the class, maybe some who are going to be in the class, or but it was great to hear from most of you that kind of you enjoyed the session, and we hope to bring such webinars again and again. Thank you very much.